Wow.
Okay, now.
Now it's your turn.
No, I won't. No, I'll let you talk, then I'll hit you. By the way, the one, Abbie Hoffman.
I don't, I'm a little flabbergasted. I don't exactly know how to approach that question, actually, Barry. Am I supposed to show the scars or what?
It's not a question. No. As a matter of fact, if I were your lawyer...
I want to tell you, because I do include it in my talk, because I do get lectures about how lucky I am to be in the free world. In this free world, I've been busted 41 times. I've been on trial 3 times for speeches. I've been banned in 13 states, not even allowed to enter to speak. I have 26,000 pages of FBI FOIA files, plus about another 30 or 40,000 pages from 8 other agencies. Excuse me, Barry, what are you throwing your hands up for? 155...
Because you make me want to say something. Go ahead, you're right.
Well, let me...
Go ahead. You're right.
My only danger on... we never met, right? They said, look, Barry Farber's a decent guy, but he asks questions, then he gives the answers. And that's what the show's about.
I do better than that. I ask the questions, I give the answers, and then I comment upon the dialogue.
First of all, let me say this. 155 illegal wiretaps, mail surveillances, burglaries, dialogue like this emanating from the Oval Office, May 1971. Our president, Richard Nixon, speaking. Let's get some thugs and go out there and really smash the noses of those demonstrators. Haldeman answering, yeah, some real strikebreaker types. Murderers to go in there with some real gusto. Yeah, like getting Abbie Hoffman. Oh, yeah, aren't the Chicago 7 all Jews? Yeah, Rennie Davis is a Jew, says Nixon. Is so good the FBI was at the time. I don't know about Rennie Davis, says Haldeman. Yeah, but Abbie Hoffman, he's a Jew. Then, says Nixon, then at least half the Chicago 7 must be Jews. Well, of course, they did send their thugs in, and they broke the nose 6 or 7 times. Okay, right, this ain't a gulag, and America 1960 to 1980 and 1990 isn't the Russia of the 1910s. In America, we've raised entertainment to a need on the level of creativity and love. We communicate through a soap opera, partly due towards introductions and shows such as yours. This is entertainment, and so any revolutionary has to be able to dissolve the barrier between education and entertainment, and any Jew that can't get a laugh 1 out of 10 times at least ain't worth his weight in chicken fat. So
let me just introduce.
Hello.
Let me introduce you. How you doing?
Hello, Barry.
Let me introduce your brother panelist. This is Charles Wiley, founder of the Committee for Responsible Patriotism. Henry Rothblatt is one of the 5 most famous lawyers in America and one of the 10 most famous lawyers in American history. He has defended the likes of Colonel Henderson, the Green Berets, and those who broke into Watergate. David Schulte, on my flanker microphone, dearest permanent friend of these proceedings. Abbie, I'm just going to let you... I'm going to let others enjoy you. Surrounded. So I wish we had 8 more. I
debated that Liddy guy about a week ago in a conservative area. Offered to bet my fee that I'd whip him, even in a conservative school, because the myth is that this guy's real popular on campus, and I'm outdrawing him 2 or 3 to 1. I know it's just a hype. And I went in there and just, like, tore the guts out of the guy. No question at all. Even the Albuquerque Journal said, Liddy fizzles, Abbie wins hands down. So I took care of one of your clients.
I didn't represent Gordon Liddy. I represented the so-called 4 Cuban burglars who...
Yeah,
Gordon was their boss.
I met the Cuban burglars. I gave a speech at the University of Miami in 1969, in the winter of 1969, that was turned into a planned riot by some of those people, and there were 42 arrests during that speech, that they planned to disrupt this riot, the guys that you represented. No kidding.
Yeah, I know. I
met a lot of your friends. It's a small world.
I was told about it. Yeah. My client, Frank Sturgis, told me that one of the things that he was part of the plumber operations was to break up meetings in which you and others were involved. So that comes as no big surprise to me.
Well, did you say you get a fee for these lectures?
Are
you a paid lecturer?
Yeah, generally.
In other words,
half the talks I give are benefits.
What would you say a fee is?
If I speak on the campuses, like this fee down here? It's pretty good, actually. It's low for me. 2,500. The Speakers Bureau takes a third. But you're talking.
Well, there's another benefit of being revolutionary.
If you're trying to show the corrupt. Wait a second. If you're trying to point at some kind of corruption, you're looking at somebody that doesn't own any property, bonds, investments,
corruption, sir.
securities, and who gives at least half his money to what he believes in. That's all the difference.
You are a capitalist.
Hold it.
I'm not Sister Teresa.
Hold it. Now that we've chosen up sides, presently we'll play. Say, for the sake of this commercial, a patriotic American and Abbie Hoffman's skill drives you into high blood pressure where your doctor doesn't like it. You need drugs to come back down. Prevention Magazine says probably not. 5-year study, yours free of charge. 4,000 patients, world-famous U.S. clinic. High blood pressure was reduced successfully in a majority of cases, mild and severe, without drugs. Now, the whole story is between covers of a free brochure entitled The Natural Way to Control High Blood Pressure. You can't pay for this. It's free, along with a money-saving subscription to prevention. Now, this is a risk-free offer. Millions of people love prevention. You probably will, too, but prevention doesn't want you to take the chance. Call the number I'm going to give. You'll get the next issue of Prevention. You'll get The Natural Way to Control High Blood Pressure. If you want to keep on getting prevention, pay the bill. Just $10.97 for 12 monthly issues. Otherwise, owe nothing, pay nothing, and keep the issue and the report. Call now. Judson 2000 this minute. Now, I have no anger at Abbie Hoffman. Abbie Hoffman is a symptom. Abbie Hoffman is an alarm clock. Abbie Hoffman is a delight. My anger is at an earnest young broadcaster I heard who had Abbie Hoffman on the air, and that guy was so happy to have Abbie Hoffman on the air. Oh, you could tell his kneecaps were a little made out of guava jelly. Oh, could this be happening to him? His little heart was all aflutter. And Abbie, skillfully. Did you ever find yourself on the side of the enemy because your side is such a schlemiel?
Oh, he's conning these guys.
No. But did you ever switch in the middle of a game and find yourself on the side of the enemy because your side was absolutely the pits, and the enemy was putting them in, like Joe Namath, 18 yards down the
wrong. They're not your side.
Well,
those guys are.
Okay,
idiots.
But anyhow,
I mean, come on.
Here was the deal. This interview, and Abbie couldn't identify this interview if the FBI promised him another page in his record, because Abbie's had a million interviews like this, where Abbie is there taking the measure of the interviewer, and firstly he slips in a little plug for Marxism, and talks about a Marxist professor he admired above all. And he stands there. Abbie is saying, "Come on, Schlemiel, say something. Rise to the bait. Take a punch." And the guy's standing there.
The guy thought he was talking about Groucho Marx.
The guy's smiling like the front end of a Japanese bulldozer, so thrilled to have Abbie Hoffman on the air. In other countries, Charles, that you and I know well and care deeply about, people go to jail for standing up and saying what this Locks didn't have enough gumption to say, namely, wait a minute, Abbie, you admire Marxism? What has Marxism done for how many millions, and what has it done to how many millions? And tell us why you admire the Marxists so much. No, the guy just stood there. Didn't throw a punch. Cigar store Indian.
Oh, geez, I don't know where to relate to that in between drug-free cures for high blood pressure and something you spray on your car that's going to save it for eternity. I mean, we're into complete bullland. There's so many men in this room inquisiting me. I feel like I'm on trial in a Muslim trial in Tehran or something. I mean,
you're getting equal time.
I don't think you even know me. Number one, if you read about me, especially in Wingo and Zingo, you can't read about me. I mean, there's an article today, 6 factual errors. So you can't read about me in the press. When I give a speech on a campus, I have a standard routine. I pull out a $100 bill. I say, where's the local reporter? I'll bet you I find 3 factual errors or more. So you can't read about me. You can only read about my books or come and hear me talk or have a one-to-one talk. But we haven't had that. You've gone off on like some whole kind of weird trip, and you don't even know me. You don't know me from nothing.
Abbie, let me go off on another, what you would consider a weird trip. Are you ready? Are you in the mood for another weird
trip? What I hear
trip?
about you on the street? I mean, I ain't getting into that.
You want to, I'd love to know what you hear about me on the street, and particularly which street. But stand by. All right, let's start with a short weird trip, okay? You boast of having 26 26,000 pages on you in the FBI reports. And I'm saying, well,
it was certainly a
wait a minute, don't derail me.
Complaint. It
Right,
was a
okay.
surprise. Hey, all this, it's a surprise.
Okay.
When you say to me that somebody like you would be arrested, and I've already been arrested 41 times. I've been in jail 22 times in jails and prisons, and you're acting as if it's never happened.
No, I'm saying, no.
You're operating on a different kind of reality than I am.
Let's test your candor, Abbie. I want Abbie Hoffman to answer this question. Tell me the difference, Mr. Hoffman, between Abbie Hoffman going to jail for a political disturbance in the United States of America and an anti-Nazi going to jail in wartime Vienna, or an anti-communist going to jail in Hanoi today. What is the difference between those three trips to jail?
But you stacking the deck, number one. Obviously, if I was standing up in France or Holland against the Nazis in 1939, I doubt if you would be sitting here interviewing me. You are interviewing me.
Precisely.
So we're talking about whether free speech exists in this country here and now. You can say whatever you want to say, Barry. You can say it to 1 million or 2 million people all the time. I'm telling you that when I've opened my mouth, I've been on trial lots and lots and lots of times. I've been banned in states. My books are banned in lots of schools and lots of libraries, okay?
Come on, you know that's good for business.
when I was bragging about that FBI, I was also complaining because it conflicts with what I learned in high school.
There's
a lot of things that I don't like about this society because they conflict with my American education. It's got nothing to do with Marx or Engels or any of those other European guys. It has to conflict with what I learned about it in my American education.
Well, I'm just telling you how right are the words you heard about me on the so-called street. I would rather have 26,000 pages about me in the FBI files than my name scribbled down on a piece of paper in the hands of a Gestapo officer or a member of the KGB looking for me in the night.
Do you want me to say we got a better deal than the Third Reich? I mean, what is
that would not be a bad thing for an Abbie Hoffman to say once in a while. And
what do you mean once in a while?
Well,
I mean, you don't know me. You never read one of my books. You never came to the lecture. You don't know what the hell I talk about.
So then give me an F. Give me an F in Hoffmanology and tell me what you like about America.
Pizza.
That's the best you can come.
Oh, come on! This is just a comedy act that he's doing. He's not interested in my experience.
All right, I'm interested.
I am the comedy act, right? I am the comedy act. Denmark was the aggressor to Adolf Hitler. Go ahead.
I'm interested in the answer. I never see. I see two things come out of you constantly. One is boasting about all the things that you say you're complaining about. Secondly, a sort of a self-pity in the complaining about all this awful stuff that's been done for you. I never see any sign that you accept the responsibility for anything that you have done. You were involved in setting up, to a great extent, the drug culture in this country. Kids have died out there by the thousands. The suffering is incredible. You've enriched the mafia by huge amounts of money and all of the ugliness that goes with it. There's never a sign of remorse or pity for those poor souls that have been ground under your heel. You were involved in selling out whole sections of the world, which then became the victims of genocide. And those people that you were cheering on have murdered, tortured, and there's never a sign that you accept any responsibility, never a sign that you look back at any of these things that you've been involved with and ever question any of it. Comment?
I don't know. It's like really weird. It's like a stacked deck here. I mean, there's four people all drawing.
Oh, no, I only gave you one question.
But I don't know you from nothing. I don't know what you work for a private detective.
It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with anything.
I just killed millions. No,
I didn't say you killed. I said you have a moral responsibility for having started the drug culture in this country.
Let me say something about the drug culture. I was trained as a clinical psychologist by who I consider to be the greatest American psychologist that ever lived. His name was Abraham Maslow, Brandeis to Berkeley. I was a clinical psychologist for 3 years when I felt that a lot of the problems lay in the society out there. That's when I went south to Mississippi and Georgia, working outside the system. The system at the time happened to be legal segregation. Now, and for quite a while, for the last 8 months at least, I've been working as a drug counselor. Okay, working with addicts. Your simplistic view, what you call the drug culture, I just happen to call America. There's 350,000 drugs used in America. We cannot separate the so-called drug culture from the whole society as a problem. The problem is much more complex, the problem of addiction, the problem of drug abuse, than you lay it out to make it believe in your simplistic attitude.
We didn't have a drug culture before guys like you came along. We had the same problems.
I don't know what you mean we didn't have a drug culture.
There was a... I have a clipping...
What's the definition of a drug?
I have a clipping out of the New York Times back in the middle 50s in which they said something like 90% of all of the drugs in America were sold in one small section of New York City. Now...
Charles, that's so much garbage.
Yeah,
let me tell you something.
In the early 50s?
Wait, let me... I don't mean to be a defender of Abbie. He can speak
Go ahead,
for himself.
defend him.
And I'm not here to gang up on you on this issue. I happen to be on your side. You are so right. You want to talk about who's responsible for the drug problems in this society? The pharmaceutical giants of America and our orthodox doctors. They have hooked the population on drugs. They teach them that their doctor is God. They put the white coat on them and they learn to worship him. And that doctor hands out the drugs to the families, and the kids begin to believe that the drugs are the way of salvation for every problem. So it is your doctors, your orthodox doctors, and your pharmaceutical giants who have hooked the culture, not the Abbie Hoffmans. And I say to those doctors and those pharmaceutical giants, shame on you. And then our society has done it worse.
Henry.
What have we done?
Henry.
What have we done?
Henry.
We have prohibited certain controlled substances, and we make legal other poisons that are freely available on the market. The people who smoke themselves to death, bring themselves to death, and addict themselves to sugar.
Okay, Henry, I'm sorry. I must interrupt you right now because we must adjourn for a short medley of selected business announcements, whereupon we will reconvene. And I will tell you how I would have voted on your last speech had I been a member of the jury. And incidentally, it would not be a bad speech for an attorney defending a drug pusher. I'm Barry Farber, and not even Henry Rothblatt, in one of his most splendiferous rhetorical lunges, is going to divert me for long from the deliciousness of having Abbie Hoffman here. But Henry, I am trying now to picture in a Nazi concentration camp and a horrified onlooker watching the extermination of Jews, and the SS guard, very annoyed, turning around and saying, "What's the matter? Don't you think they have anti-Semitism in South Carolina?" Or a thief caught red-handed machine gunning his way into a bank, and at his trial he says, "What's the matter, Judge? You never cheated on an expense voucher?" That to me is the relationship between the drug industry, parentheses, the pharmaceutical giants, and the drug industry as Abbie Hoffman has related to it. Now, I grew up getting paregoric, which has opium in it, when I was a baby, all kinds of cough medicines with codeine, and I don't know what in the world, all kinds of marvelous stuff that kept me quiet and made me feel better, but it would never occur to me to go into the drug culture. And let me tell you something, if I ever did, you will never hear me crying that the pharmaceutical giants softened me up for the big kill and the big push.
But the doctors have conditioned the people to believe that the pills were conditioned. Wait a while. But the doctors have conditioned the people by their mystique that a drug will solve all problems. So they've conditioned these kids to get into snorting cocaine, smoking pot. It's the doctors who have conditioned them. And they started to condition them when they were youngsters by handing them those lollipops in the pediatrician's office, addicting them to sugar. I say they are the
Saying sugar?
No.
Sugar?
No, Henry,
So
first of all...
let's not kid ourselves. The addictors are not these so-called pushers. They're just getting in on the act that the establishment has long started
Henry,
before they've even...
Henry.
So let's not... I say they are both bad. And where it all is.
Henry.
And the truth is, they are making billions handing out their useless medication.
Henry, you remind me of that Baptist preacher in West Virginia who was particularly grandiloquent one Sunday morning, and one of the sacristy rats, the choir boys, noticed that on one of the pages that had fluttered down from the pulpit to the carpet, he had penciled in a margin on page 4 or 5 of his text. He'd penciled in off to one side the notation that said, "Argument unsubstantiated here, yell like hell." Now, I call upon you, Henry, in the name of common sense, to blame Adolf Hitler. Don't blame the Danish Nazis. Blame Adolf Hitler. Don't blame the handful of Norwegian quislings. Blame the Nazis. Don't blame the anti-Semitic Poles. Adolf Hitler was the hubcap, the core, the center of the energy of all that evil. And I am telling you that we would not even be noticing the drug companies had the scourge of what we really mean by narcotics burgeoned up and conquered so much of America, beginning in, as Charles Wiley said, the 1950s.
What is the difference between being addicted to cocaine or being addicted to heroin or taking those respectable drugs like diazepam?
It's the difference between a marshmallow and a mellow marsh.
One of the doctor gives it to you, and the other you go out and buy it on the illegal market.
No, Henry. Henry, you know good and well that the seeking of medical relief through medications, through that kind of drug, is a world apart. If you were on the other side, you'd be just as grandiloquent. It's a world apart from turning on and getting high.
They are making those patients high. They accomplish no therapeutic purpose, and they know
So
it.
now let me hear. Fine, Henry. I've heard your opinion about the pharmaceutical giants. May I hear it?
No, the doctors are just as bad.
The doctors. May I hear it now about the underworld? May I hear it now about the cocaine pushers?
But they're merely getting into the doctor's act. That's all they're doing. They're getting into the act. They always capitalize on what the so-called respectable people are doing.
David Schulte.
I've been working as a counselor with addicts for 10 months. There's not a single thing that you've said that is helpful in the treatment or cure of addiction. It's all based on absolute hysteria. It's suitable for running for politics. You ought to run for politics, Barry.
Good idea. It's also,
with that kind of talk,
suitable for the prevention. It's also suitable for the prevention. Absolutely, Abby. Abby, in my day, when I was in school,
sorry about that.
Propaganda posters against drugs were on the walls. We had a bad
I don't know how old you are. It was probably legal. 1908, it was all legal, man.
Of drugs. We were conditioned against drugs, and you can go ahead and smirk all you want to. It worked. It worked. It turned us mentally
was on drugs before the 1960s.
Nobody was
on people were on drugs.
In 1903, heroin was legal in New York and quite popular. Let's not
handful of people.
David, go ahead.
I think we're making a great mistake. I haven't come here, and nobody else has come here to change Mr. Hoffman's mind or his philosophy. I'd like to hear what he has to say. I know I'm not going to agree with it, but that is inconsequential. You are an important figure in the public scene today, whether people like you, whether they don't. You stood for something which some people think is good, some people think is bad, but I'd like to hear what it is you do stand for. All I know about you is that you were, I think the word was yippie. Was that Jerry Rubin? Hippie, yippie. What is your philosophy? What was your philosophy? And what are you trying to do? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, I think I'm trying to close the gap between philosophy, which I call truth, and politics, which I call lies. And all that I hear about drugs on the media, to take one subject, is lies.
Well, what would you like to see happen?
I don't think it conforms with the images of what I would like to see. I would like to see the gap between the ideals that I learned about America in my 3rd grade civics class stop rudely clashing with the reality. It wasn't Marxism or Leninism or any foreign ideology that created the 60s. It was the fact that when we started to challenge the power structure, we found out that there was a whole other set of rules whereby power maintained itself in office. We went south and we found that there was legal segregation. We looked back at our high school education and we said, hey, they never told us about this. They didn't tell us about the Rosenbergs, the Palmer raids, the internment of the Japanese, that there had even been a depression. I've seen high school books right now today that make Richard Nixon look like a statesman, that have rewritten the entire period. Now, it was that collision with the mythology of America, justice for all, and the discovery that the reality was quite a different subject that I think propelled most of the people into the activism of the 60s. Now, I don't know where you get this, what do you think, I'm like some kind of drug junkie or addict, or what did the drugs become so important?
Drugs was the basis of everything that you did. These kids were together to have drug parties. It wasn't activism.
Could we hear what Mr. Hoffman's political philosophy is? Forget drugs for a moment. They may be a very important subject, but it's not the most important. What would you like to see this country become? How would you like to make reality equal the ideals that you learned in the third grade?
All right, look, we have 13,000 radio stations, TV stations, and newspapers speaking daily to the American public. I'd like to see one that stood up for labor when there was a labor management dispute that led to a strike. I'd like to see one newspaper that advocated the nationalization of the oil industry. I'd like to see one deviation in terms of the Mideast policy or our policy in Central America. Let's say during the whole debate about the Falklands, maybe one station would point out that in 1831 the Marines invaded the Falkland Islands also. I'd like to see some different points of view. Now, I've been over there to France, and you can see Le Figaro, Humanité, Le Matin, Libération, an independent left journalist. You get a real choice. I don't see that choice in America. I see the illusion of free speech and choice, but I don't see it out there. And I don't believe that the only reason is that the people out there just don't want to hear any of this stuff. I believe that things are controlled from the source. I understand enough about the advertising industry, about how fashions are created, et cetera, to know that we create needs in the middle of the media, and then the people go out and fulfill the needs.
Excuse me, your underground press all went out of business because they couldn't sell any newspapers. They went through, at your highlight time, they were selling this junk all over the country, and they just plain went out of business because nobody bought the papers after a while. It had nothing to do with any conspiracies.
Hold it. If Abbie Hoffman were to give the journalists $100 for every factual error they made covering him, and if he were to give them $100 for every factual error he made about recent American history, I wonder what kind of money.
Which one? Come on, Barry. I want to know.
Abbie, what you have said is replete with factual error.
Which one?
When we reconvene after a short business break, as much as I can remember, I'll be happy to have you comment upon. Okay?
Yeah, you get $1 for every factual error.
Do I really?
Yeah.
Okay, to be continued. I'm Barry Farber, and I pity the audience because you can only hear Abbie Hoffman during the minutes that we're on the air. We can hear him during the breaks.
Oh, come on,
and what he says during the breaks is equally amusing. Abby, forgive me for talking while you're interrupting. Abbie Hoffman said during the most recent break, the Russians are, and he mentioned a mild pejorative term, they've only invented one way to censor. But in America, we've invented 99 ways to censor. And I wonder, I'm afraid I'll go to my grave wondering if Abbie Hoffman knew the irony in his next sentence. He waved over to a copy of his book and said, I have an article in there about the 99 American ways to censor. Right. Now, this is a book, right? Yeah. It is published in the English language. It is available throughout the United States of America, which you have put down for a developer being 99 times better at censorship than the Russians. And to demonstrate your point, you've got a book in circulation now detailing it.
I don't have any problem. What is the big problem with that?
It's not censored. That's the problem.
Hey, look. I was at a speech. I gave a speech 2 weeks ago, Cal Polytech. Okay, it was 2 FBI agents recording the whole speech. Why? Violation of why? Violation of Interstate Riot Act number 3 coming up, because I'm urging people to come on June 12th to stand outside the UN and protest against the nuclear arms race in Oklahoma. Yes.
All right, folks.
No more than that.
Abbie, it's my duty to warn you. This is my broadcaster's Miranda Act, okay? It's my duty to warn you. You put on your flak jacket now, and you appear to be about to walk out in about the middle of what we thought was going to be a longer broadcast. Now then, you will follow the tradition of Ayn Rand, who walked out of this show. Yeah. Shelley Winters, who walked out.
Herbert Aptheker, who...
Herbert Aptheker, who
10
walked
minutes.
out.
It only took him 10 minutes to run.
And so if you're going to leave, I just want you to know, it's not a new act. It's not a new act. It's not worthy of you, Abbie. It's not worthy. You can do better than that.
So you like the book, huh, Barry? I mean, you like the book, huh? I can tell you really like the book, huh?
Abbie, I like the nation that makes you and the book A possibility and B a delight. Okay?
Hey, it's never been a case of my country right or wrong, because my country's America. It's just the land and the people. It's just the government and the multinational corporations that screw up every year.
Can you name a better?
I don't have to. I don't have to.
You don't have to. You got your civil rights.
Of course
you don't have to.
I don't have to do that.
Of course you don't have to.
I mean, where is the rule
I'm inviting you to. No, I'm inviting you to.
You judge in a vacuum, everything is no good.
Well, on what issue? On care for the poor, for the indigent? Yeah, every Scandinavian country, every European country.
No, wait, stop. I know.
And
look, I commute between...
every socialist country.
I commute between... Oh,
that's right.
I commute between here...
I just told you. I think if you want to judge a country by what it does to the least
I've heard of boxers throwing a left hand 100 times a second. You throw a left tongue right into my face, so I can't really answer. First of all, you have just said the trigger thing of the whole occasion now when you say the Scandinavian countries, and then as though it's an afterthought, and all the socialist countries. By that you mean the Soviet Union, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Czechoslovakia, East Germany.
No, if you're asking me about the right of freedom of speech, that's another question.
I'm asking you about physical well-being,
about
material well-being,
level of literacy.
Yeah, standard of living.
No, not standard of living. Level of literacy.
Can we stay with the last point? You've gone 4 points. You go a mile a minute, and you never answer a question. You never stay with a point. Your point was, now let's talk about it, that in the so-called socialist countries, they are handling their poor better than we are. Yeah. Now, that was what you said. Now we're off on literacy or something. Let's stay with that.
Well, literacy
you mean
happens
the
to be
poor
a
people
problem
of Poland are better off than the poor people in this country?
The poor people...
In well-being, material well-being. We're not getting to freedom of speech and the rest of it. Material well-being. That is your point. Now, are you telling me...
The gap between the poorest person in Poland and the richest person...
No,
the chorus of I
understand this point.
Look, I'm saying that if you want to judge a country by what it does for the least advantage, it's very hard. Where I was in prison, 100 blocks north of here, you see, where the kid standing on the street corner has 50% of chance of getting a job, where he has 20 times the chance of going to prison as he does to go to college, where I saw 2 murders with my own eyes, where I'm in a jail where there's 16 guys packed into the room, and you're supposed to tell me that this is really, really good, that we should even be comparing this with like something in Poland or Zambia or Bangladesh or anything? Well, why do we have to go abroad
because
to find
there's a real
comparisons?
world in which there's problems every place. The only thing intelligent people can do...
you ain't going to find that in Sweden, and you ain't even going to find it in Cuba, I'll tell you right now.
You keep going from point to point. What you say is that this country has problems. Every place in the world has problems. The only thing that means anything is comparisons. If you can't compare, then everything loses all its meaning. And that's what you keep doing. You point that this is bad, this is bad. The world is bad, the world is unfair. Every single person born less than 6 feet tall has a disadvantage to the big guy with the broad shoulders that does. Everybody that has to wear glasses has a disadvantage. We all know that. So you zero in on it, and you say, isn't this terrible, this doesn't work, but there's only one world that I know of, and that one's here.
No.
Maybe there's some place where some of us don't have to wear glasses. Maybe there's some place where we all have broad shoulders and we're all 6 feet tall and we all have bulging muscles.
See, that attitude is what I call a reactionary attitude, as opposed to my own attitude, which is revolutionary, which accepts the idea that people can change their own fate, especially if they do organize. I mean, all the areas where I've been organized, and then we haven't talked about anything that I happen to do since 1960, whether it's in the slum ghettos in New England, whether it was sharecroppers in Mississippi, whether it was street people on the Lower East Side, or young people that didn't want to go off and fight in an old general's war, or whether it was rural conservative farmers, by the way, which I've been doing for the last 4 years, in upstate New York, fighting to save their local economies, fighting to save their local river against the federal boondoggle. Okay? Every one of these groups, they all felt the same attitude that it'd been drilled into their heads, that it's always inevitable that things happen like this. There's always going to be destruction. There's always going to be the little people who are going to get stepped on and everything. I'm saying just the opposite. I'm saying if the little people get together, they are one match for the big people, because there ain't so many big people.
Well, of course the little people are more than a match.
Abbie?
Well, I don't understand. It's happening every day.
Where? Show us an example. You have wonderful ideals in the 3rd grade. Where has the 3rd grade turned into reality in the world today?
Well, I think we, we stopped the Army Corps of Engineers from wasting $3 billion of the American people's money.
And what country did this all take place in? That's the question.
This took place
baby. In other words, what you are trying to do, let's assume that your causes were right, which I don't accept, obviously in most cases. But assuming that they were right, you have been able to carry out what you said was so necessary under this system.
Stand by. When we reconvene, I will tell Mr. Hoffman to his face, and I'll tell the world what I heard about Abbie Hoffman during the McGovern Convention from a bellboy at the Albion Hotel. We'll be right back. WMCA, Strauss Communications, New York. Yes, I am Barry Farber, and I did indeed say within the past few minutes that if you kept your radio fixed right where it is, then I would tell Abbie Hoffman and the world what I learned about him from a bellboy at the Albion Hotel in Miami Beach, Florida during the McGovern Convention. In truth, I have never been inside the Albion Hotel. I've never met a bellboy from the Albion Hotel, and I heard nothing from anybody connected with the Albion Hotel about Abbie Hoffman. I merely used that as my revolutionary device to make sure Abbie Hoffman wouldn't walk out during the break and would stay for this particular stanza. My ploy has worked. I haven't used as many tricks as Abbie Hoffman has, so I haven't had as much success.
You can take the handcuffs off now.
My batting average is not as good as his, but occasionally my side can pull one that works too. Abbie Hoffman pulls many. Between covers of his book, Square Dancing in the Ice Age, Underground Writings by Abbie Hoffman, Square Dancing in the Ice Age. Abbie, is it worth $14.95?
No. But what is?
Square Dancing in the Ice Age.
Honestly, I can't.
Look at the inscription.
The inscription to Charles Wiley says, Abbie Hoffman, and Abbie Hoffman, what is this?
To Charles Wiley.
To Charles Wiley, true blue commie, Abbie. Henry Rothblatt is with us, one of the most noteworthy lawyers of our age. He defends people like the Green Berets, Colonel Henderson, the 4 Cubans who broke into Watergate, and dozens of other front-page headline cases. David Schulte on my flanker microphone, Charles Wiley, founder and director of... Hey, by the way, don't you wish we had a camera to put on Abbie's face? I don't think I've mentioned the name of your committee yet.
No.
All right. Now, if I were a television director, I'd have the camera aim right in on Abbie's face when I was about to introduce Wiley, because his committee is the Committee for Responsible Patriotism. Now,
CRP.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, well, patriotism is probably jingoism. It's probably not my definition of patriotism. So I once wore a shirt, red, white, and blue shirt. This is his famous shirt case. And I wore it to the House Un-American Activities Committee because we had been subpoenaed there for being un-American, and the House Un-American Activities Committee had been one of my favorite villains for 10 years. So as I walked up with this shirt, the policeman ripped it in 27,000 pieces, and I was arrested for defacing and defiling the flag. The shirt, I bought in a boutique quite near here. It was quite fashionable at the time. Many people wore the same shirt, Ricky Nelson, Roy Rogers, but there was a law on the books that had just been put on that you cannot deface the flag, the four-leaf clover, and Smokey and the Bear. The trial was real interesting. I got 30 days. And the judge said, do you have any last words before sentencing? And I said, I regret that I have but one shirt to give for my country. Yeah, you don't get a chance to use that often, but I was reflecting. You see, if you examine it carefully, as historians have, they see this as a patriotic gesture. And to prove the point, when we appealed the case, which I won in the appeals court, the prosecutor, quoting why this law should be in there, said that symbols and laws in this are protected from free speech, and used his quote from Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler. It was incredible. The U.S. prosecutor used that as a defense. But working without or within the system, whatever you want to call it, that law does not exist anymore. And in fact, the House Un-American Activities Committee doesn't exist. But I wasn't defacing or defiling the flag. I was defacing or defiling the committee and that law. You understand what I was saying? I don't consider myself unpatriotic, as this gentleman obviously does. We have just a difference about what exactly the country is and who's living in it.
Well, Abbie, isn't it some vindication of the American judicial system that an appellate court, an American appellate court, took that stupid law and threw it out, and you were vindicated.
Well,
and within our system, you were able to vindicate the stupidity that these bureaucrats attempt to perpetrate upon us. So that this is something that we can be proud of in America. Some of the few things we can take the stupidity of bureaucracy and rub their nose into it.
Well, so I don't view myself as having to stand up, even though it is 2 a.m., and sing the Star-Spangled Banner, you know, as the jet bombers fly by the flag each night on TV. That wonderful image of what the country is. It's very interesting, because I think it is this gentleman's and his responsible patriotisms. I think their image comes on 2 a.m., you know, on TV, when they play the Star-Spangled Banner, and it's all the aircraft carriers and the fighter bombing jets that are flying by. You know, to me, it's the pluralism of the country.
Abbie, had it not been for a multiplicity of American aircraft carriers and fighter planes and troops and tanks, then Richard Nixon and Ehrlichman or Alderman or whatever would have never had the occasion to speculate upon whether Abbie Hoffman or Rennie Davis were Jewish or not, because any one of you who might have been would have been exterminated by the late Adolf Hitler. I see nothing wrong with democracies being strong. I love the strength of all democracies. May it flourish.
Look, it's strong, but it's a question of how you see the country's strengths and everything. I mean, the strength that we can sit here and argue this all out is, like, pretty interesting. The strength of, like, exhibited in the Marine hymn, for example, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. We've invaded Mexico 12 times. I've been in Mexico for 2 years. The people really, really resent that whole song and that Marines and the invasion of the halls of Montezuma. I don't think we've asked ourselves why we've gone out there, why we're in Central America, why we've invaded Central America 25 times.
There's where you're getting the world out of a vacuum. First of all, those pictures that you're talking about, and you're not that far off the mark when you say I identify with that, because in the final crunch, and you above all, if you really believe in some of the things that you have said, would understand it best. In the final crunch, putting it on the line where you lose your life makes all other sacrifices look like nothing. And it was it was a lot of people in a lot of wars putting it on the line that made it all possible. So if you're going to salute somebody when you play that Star Spangled Banner, if not them, who?
Hey, look, well, I'll tell you. Look, the French philosophers that you probably like a lot now, over there in France they have philosophers. They don't teach it in this country. Here it's business administration, engineering. They said that in the 60s, that was one of the proudest moments of of democracy, of Western civilization, because at no time have a people stood up against their country at a time of imperialist war, but when you send the troops out, usually it's really popular. You see in London and Buenos Aires tonight how popular war is, and I can assure you in 64 and 65, when we were just small groups battling against U.S. policy in Vietnam, it was very, very an unpopular cause. And enough people stood with it and stayed with it so that enough momentum built up so that the troops finally came home. It's not something we should be ashamed of. And when when I go out and give speeches, the groups that come the most and do the most cheering happen to be Vietnam veterans. I'm telling you.
A very small percentage of Vietnam veterans.
A small percentage.
How many people,
let me ask this question.
Let's stay with one point.
I want to
How many of your Vietnam veterans are in the Vietnam Veterans Against the War crowd and their spin-off now?
That's an insignificant question. I would like to tell Mr. Hoffman what my image is.
Mr. Schultz.
When we came out of World War II.
Let's forget Vietnam. This is an interminable debate. My image
let me make a single
Mr. Schulte. Mr. Schulte has been forbearing.
You've got to learn to inhale, Charles Wiley.
But inhale. You interrupted my point. I'm entitled to a point, Schulte. He made a point.
The master of ceremonies has just ruled you out of order.
I have not ruled him out of order. I have said that as far as my inner ear is concerned, it is Mr. Schulte's turn. Mr. Wiley will be back in action and back in order, as will Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Rothblatt.
My question to Mr. Hoffman is this. I have an image. My image is that this country is in deep trouble with Russia. Now, you may not believe it, or you may believe it, but that's my image. A lot of people have the same image. My question to you is, whose side are you on?
Well, I happen to be Russian-American, actually. My real name is Shapoyzhnikov. I'm the only Russian-American that I know that even admits it. I don't believe we're at war with Russia.
I didn't say that.
You asked me which side am I...
Yes.
I don't happen to see it that way. I happen to see that there are people in this country who have loads and loads of money, and it's in their interests and their corporate interests that the third world be pacified so they can get cheap labor, as well as they've been getting cheap resources for lots and lots of time. So the battle, to me, has never been east-west. It's been a battle of north-south between those that have everything and those that have very little. And that's just, so I see it different.
It sounds like that movie. It sounds like Warren Beatty in Reds.
Oh, yeah. Did you see that?
Yeah, loved it.
Did loved her. Hated
I stand by. Abbie Hoffman is just upset because Russia has found a way to distribute its poverty more fairly than we distribute our wealth. When we get back together.
Well, I'll think about that. You and I said something profound.
Hold it. We'll be back.